Hopefully it should kick in soon, Eric, and then you can start.
Okay.
Okay, we're on.
Okay, you want me to?
Yeah, just go ahead. I just want to make sure that the recording is, active.
Do you want to get started with the slides, Cello? Is there anybody else we're waiting for?
No, I think we're good to go. I think we're good to go. And if somebody joins, we'll have the recording, but so that Mike can get through his stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
So welcome to our second meeting for the energy management WISE project. We're going to have Mike Barnett give us an overview of the business process model methodology. So he's limited on time, so I want to get started with that. So go ahead, Mike.
Okay, can you hear me, Eric? Okay.
Yes.
All right, great. So Cello has shown these slides before. This is the improvement cycle. And of course, change management is management involved in everything. But the improvement steps that WISE and through its methodology defines for us are the ones you see on the right, where you kind of start at the top, assessing your maturity, analyze your as-is state or condition processes, and then based on that, you build a to-be design. Then you, based on that to-be design, you plan your improvements, implement those, and monitor those. So it's a typical plan, do check, act check thing. Which direction is the plan, do check, act, right?
Yep.
And that gives us our continual improvement cycle that we want to just circle around. And then what WISE provides is, and continues to evolve, are a set of tools and methodologies that we can bring to bear to make that all work very smoothly. And in particular, when we are doing that, analyzing the to-be state or condition or process, and understanding how to evolve that into a proper improvement or to-be state, then this is where business process modeling comes in quite handy for us. And what we did in the past was to develop those capabilities, build the WISE methodologies around that, or to use it, that tool. It's a tool, right? So the purpose is to enhance your improvement processes. But this is a great tool and a modern, more up-to-date tool than using the different kinds of business process, workflow and modeling capabilities that we had in the past. So what we want to talk about in these slides, if you go to the next slide, Eric, please, is this cycle and how we're going to use business process model and notation. So if I say BPMN, or if I say business process modeling, I'm referring to that standard, which is it's a standard business process model and notation. It is managed by a group called the Object Management Group, which has a bunch of other standards, some of which you probably know. And it's the de facto way to do business process modeling these days. So go to the next slide, Eric, please. What we want to achieve is make a couple of important step increases in our capability, maturity of the energy management systems that you folks are creating and managing. Documentation, a couple of things we get out of BPMN that help us quite a lot is documentation, which will help us move up a step. Most, I think, Scott and Cello, you can weigh in here, but I think the intent of these slides is to convey that there, a lot of the water, wastewater utilities are kind of in the managed, or at least in the managed state in terms of maturity, and are trying to move up to something that's more standardized, and then something that's more predictable, and eventually get as much of the organization as possible to be innovative. And BPMN, through its ability to convey meaning very, very precisely and well, gives us that kind of documentation capability we're looking for. And it's a standard that evolved over really the past 50 years of knowledge and experience in business process modeling. So it's rigorous. And that means that once we have these models, we can do all sorts of analysis with it. We can simulate it, we can execute the models, and all of that is going to give us a very rich set of data that we can use to move up this capability maturity model as quickly as we can. So that's the intent. Okay, next slide, Eric. So we wanted to give some examples, and Cello put together this set of slides that talk about the different things that business process models do. So let's just back up a little bit and think about in terms of energy management. What is it we're trying? What is this business process thing we're trying to manage, and how would we do that? And we thought that at a very high level, really what we're modeling are, the processes which you likely know very well already for reviewing what your energy situation is, and then implementing various projects that that eventually turn into cost savings or better energy management or zero carbon footprint, or however you define your goals. The important part of the business process modeling methods. So what you end up with is this looks like workflow, right? I mean, everybody, I hope, has seen workflow in the past, but it gets it's better. It gets very precise about what are the triggers, what are the activities, what are the decisions, what events occur, either events that occur externally that might affect how you do energy management, or what events happen while you're doing energy management that might affect some outside process or something else. And it also, let's just walk through these slides, Eric. I think this one really talks to the general process. One of the very important things it does, and Scott and I and Eric were talking about it just before, was you'll notice there are what are called swim lanes in this diagram. There are 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. And you read on the left-hand side the different roles that are indicated in these swim lanes. What that means very specifically in BPMN is that the processes in that swim lane are the responsibility of that role. That role is either a group, a division, an individual. It can be defined very generally or very specifically, however the modeler requires. And then that helps us understand, okay, these guys or this group is the go-to person when we want to understand how to or understand how this works, or if it's working the way that it is designed or intended. So swim lanes are very important. Next slide. The things that you see with red rectangles around them, those are all tasks or activities. In BPMN, that's where all of the costs and all of the time resides. So, this is a work order processing kind of BPMN model, and this, just pick the top left one, perform PM and level 1 inspection. That is the responsibility of the, what is that, PS crew, FS crew?
Pump station crew.
Yeah, pump station crew. So that activity of performing the level 1 inspection is done by that crew. It requires a number of those resources, which have a cost. It takes us a finite amount of time, which may also have a cost and a duration. And so we can specify all of these things in our diagram as these tasks or activities. They're a very central element in BPMN. The next slide, the circles show gateways. Gateways are really important because that's where the flow of work diverges or combines. So we know that where the flow of work diverges, some decision had to be made in order to identify that. And that decision is very important because those are the kinds of high valued things that activities that take place in a business process that we might want to improve or change. So we may alter the flow of work in different ways once we can identify what those decisions are and how they affect the gateways that we specify in our business process model. So the next one, how are we doing on time? I think we're doing okay. It's important to identify different systems that you use because that's where you store the data, right? Or that's how you do analysis. So we want to make sure that wherever it's relevant to a particular task or a particular piece of data or a decision that we indicate that. And you specify that with these little dotted lines between the systems that are depicted and the activities that take place. Next one. Why don't you go back one slide, Eric? I just wanted to point out a couple of things. One is that you see the arrows that are in this diagram are colored. Modelers can use colors very effectively to show things like this is the normal execution path. So the blue things are probably the way work normally flows, and the yellow paths are exceptions. So when something unexpected or perhaps abnormal or unusual occurs, those exception paths are become of interest to us. So you can use colors very effectively. And some of the models that we've done in the past, the modelers have done that quite well. They will indicate their stages or milestone processes with different colors. They'll use the arrows, as I mentioned, for different colors. And then, BPMN, the tooling that you can get for modeling in BPMN gives us a lot of analytical and usability features that we can take advantage of. For example, everything you see on the screen here, like GIS and CMMS and the different roles, the different types of data objects that you see, like on the center right of this, there's an R&R recommendation document, very important for understanding the flow of data in our process. These can all be put into a dictionary. So we can take, if we build our dictionary of the components that are, we have in our own utility or our organization, or are generally available in the energy management space, it makes it a lot easier to do analysis and for people to build models effectively. Okay. Let's go to the next slide. Any questions about any of this? Yeah, go ahead and interrupt me. Go ahead, Eric.
So is this what it would look like in some model software, or is this just a diagram that was created to show it? But I know there are modeling software tools or whatever. Is this kind of what that would look like, or
yeah,
what?
That's right. This is right out of one of those tools that we use for modeling. Okay.
And then where we have procurement and consultant, this is any input from groups outside of this swim lane. So this would be.
That's correct. Basically? Okay. Those little people icons are called additional participants. And they're very useful because, the swim lane itself identifies, the person that's the go-to responsible person. But clearly, others can contribute. And so where we have those cases, like you see design pump station, we need procurement and an external consultant to pitch in on that. So we indicate those, and they can also have their own costs associated with them.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? It all makes sense?
Mike, it's George here.
Yeah, George, go ahead.
Is this is WISE promoting this the BPN across all of the working groups? Like, is this a common theme?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah, and what we're trying to do is nudge the utilities a little bit away from what we would call diagrams. Maybe some of the older workflow widgets that have been used towards BPMN, which is much more rigorous in its definition of the meaning of these graphical icons. And that what does that mean? Well, that just means that if we do it correctly, if we follow the standard, it's a much better way to document what we've got. It's a much clearer way to describe what we want to do. And it makes it a lot easier for everybody just to convey meaning. And
Right.
understand the meaning.
If I can jump in just for a second on Eric's question, there are some software programs that, like Microsoft Visio, that are purely diagramming tools. But there are other tools that BPMN standard assumes that there's also a strictly defined database that gets generated, the data layer that contains the logic of these diagrams and allows you to do simulations. So that's the difference between an actual modeling tool and a graphing tool. And on the next slide, I think, Mike, you have it'll help answer George's question. You will see that we have on the project from UAM, we inherited guidelines that Mike has prepared. So a document that's about 30 pages that goes into detail, provides examples and so forth.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to run out of time here because I have to go do BPMN training here in a moment. But let's go to the next slide. We just wanted to point out that one of the things we did in the past, again, with the help of all these utility partners over on the left, is we built a reference model for water. And it was, again, very broad based. So at the very top level, we defined a number of very generic processes that always occur in every utility. And then what we did is, whenever you got a super complex model, the way you manage that is through encapsulation, or through a hierarchy, or decomposition or composition hierarchy. So what's shown on the right is you just, from the top, you can drill down through different levels of that model. Eventually you get to like level 3. I'll answer your question in just a second, John. At level 3 is a business process model and notation. That's BPMN, John. And that's where we use that. And below, we can continue creating detail on processes and sub-processes, and we can develop very effective models that way. Go ahead to the next slide. Okay, so in terms of energy management, what does all that mean? It looks like a good set of tools, but what are we going to do for energy management? And here's just some thoughts, and then you can discuss it. But thinking about the plan, do, check, act cycle, what would you do? And these things that are listed here in the bullets would seem to be the kinds of things in energy management that take place as you go through that cycle. So our challenge here would be, okay, great, let's build a business process model using BPMN that defines what this is. And then clearly it's going to be very specific to what happens in energy and what happens in water and wastewater. And that's what you were going to help us define. So how does that look? If you go to the next slide 14, this is not a BPMN model, so forget about it from the standpoint of modeling. But what it does is it lays out for us those plan, do, check, act steps that and shows the kinds of things that happen inside there. So this would be sort of, the way things were done in the past, but it's a starting point, a good starting point. Let's be fair. And it's got all of these very useful definitions of what happens when we plan, what happens when we implement, what happens when we monitor and analyze, and then and do a management review. So what one of the literature resources I found actually drilled into that first column there, which is you see labeled energy review, and that's what's shown on the next slide. Now this is a BPMN model. I have some issues with it, but it's a great start. And it does walk through what happens in the energy review step of what we saw in the slide before. So you see it's got those same elements that we talked about. It's got swim lanes, it's got events that occur, it's got the gateways, it's got certainly the activities. You see in gray some documents there, which are data objects that give us some information about data flow in an energy review. And we can take a look at this and we can say, well, what is it that you folks are doing as utility professionals, and how is it you're doing it for water? And then create a model that specifies that we can use for documentation and ongoing analysis, simulation, execution, whatever. Thousands of ways we can take this in the future. One other point that I thought was really unique was that in that diagram on slide 15, the columns there, they list as milestones. At the end of it, you reach some milestone. That's exactly what our CIP and delivery folks did. So it seems very helpful. You probably go through stages of various sorts. So unfortunately, I'm gonna have to just leave it at that and leave you guys, but I'm happy, Cello can answer, and certainly Scott can answer lots of questions about this and what we've done. If there's anything I can do to help, please let me know.
Thank you very much,
guys.
Mike. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Eric. Take care now.
All right.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Mike. Are there any questions that we can answer? There was a question in the chat line about the software that we're using. We started with a product called Signavio, which is really an excellent product, but there's a cost to it. It's about, I think, $1,500 per seat per year. It's a subscription. So to sort of accommodate utilities, some utilities purchased Signavio, some were not so, had budget concerns. So we have switched to using Camunda, C-A-M, it's in the chat line, which is free. It doesn't have all the nice things from Signavio, but it works well. There is also a section in the BPMN guidelines that are all posted, and I can send you a link to those guidelines in a minute, that sort of provides at the end a list of different tools for business process modeling that you can consider. It has links to websites for training. Mike is in, I think it's Kansas City Water that he's working with this week. He has given a class also sort of outside of the project, utilities, DC Water, and I think
MCES is set up also. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and if you'd like to build a little team in your utility to do business process modeling, you find it useful. There are documents, there's training, there are different resources. But it's really one of the ways we can, it's sort of the foundation for the analysis that we do later. And originally people were a little bit kind of, sounds scary, but basically you're documenting what you already know because you're already doing this. It's just a matter of mapping it to a way that that knowledge can be shared. And this kind of documentation can be useful if you have retirements and succession planning and things like that, not just for analysis. So anyway, that's just wanted to mention.
Okay, that's great. I'm gonna unshare for 1 second and bring us together and see if George or Josh, James, if you have any experience with this process. If I'll start off with saying I'm in the category that this is a little scary to me, not having dealt with it before, but now that just the little bit I've learned in a couple of weeks, I'm getting a little excited about it. Just I think not just defining it, but also I feel like maybe some of my processes don't have a conclusion. I think maybe going through the process of defining it, maybe I'll find holes in my process that I'll be able to fix. But I just wanted to hear from you guys to see where you are with this information and if you have experience with this with business process modeling.
George,
George.
yeah, George, I was going to nominate you.
Do you need me to volunteer you, George?
Yeah, it's really short. So really two things as far as the business process modeling goes. The only experience I have with it is that the group that manages our project management guidelines, they follow this process to have developed our project management guidelines. So I've seen it and I've used the end product before. As far as our energy management goes, this fits perfectly with what we have committed to doing, which is building kind of an ISO compliant energy management system. We are like, I don't even want to say we've taken the first baby step. We've kind of thought about taking the step, but we don't have any processes really in place other than a few kind of tools that we've developed that haven't yet been built into these swim lanes. So it's definitely been on the radar. So hopefully this is going to kind of help kickstart some of that work. So this is really relevant, I think.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think in our organization we have depending on the group, and I mean some of this is just the way the city of Portland is organized with the bureau structure, and then within the bureau structure there is some siloing, but I do feel like there are varying levels of sophistication as far as how our business to the degree that we're using systems like that. So actually the first example, which was the pump station crew and maintenance, preventative maintenance example, I would be surprised if we weren't somewhere towards the end of that evolution. I mean, I think there's some pretty sophisticated tools that we're using for that. I think in the energy management realm, it would be difficult for me to even categorize what our current benchmark is. So, and my position in the organization is a little bit odd too. So my questions are all around like, where's the right place to start this conversation in the organization to get it moving? Because I don't think a bottom-up approach actually is going to it works, but it takes a long time. So anyway, I'm interested in that conversation. Like where do we even begin? And I just for full disclosure, my position is sort of disconnect. I'm an analyst primarily, and I'm a wastewater guy turned energy analyst in a weird turn of events, career events. So I don't have direct reports. I'm just sort of off on the side doing, policy work and some technical work and program development work. So that's my there. I just sort of regurgitated my whole scene there, but I think that's kind of, those are the questions that I have.
I think it's interesting because I don't think that Eric, in your case, I think that you don't have like a really big team there. So maybe you can comment on that a little bit.
Yeah, I think we're all probably in a similar boat as far as that goes. I think that the efforts and the resources are pretty small around the utilities on energy management. It's a necessary thing, so there's some staff set aside for it, but it's pretty minimal. And in my case, it's me right now, and we're looking to expand that a little bit. We did get an energy manager from our utility, which has been a big help, and but it's hard to be a one-man crew. I mean, it's hard to get much done when you don't have a lot to bounce off of. So let me share again, and we did have so Cello has some pretty aggressive goals for us, but I think they're achievable. For this year, in the next 3 months, select a sub process and develop the as-is model. So that's something that it's 3 months on here. Actually, we're going to try to do something in the next couple of weeks to do a little bit of processing or documenting our processes. And then the analysis, the 2B, and then the documentation and the improvement plan, and really putting in something into place for the second year. So as I was saying, I recently was asked to give an update on my activities, and so I started to really think about. I was hired as the energy program manager, and when I got the position, we didn't have an energy program, so I didn't know what I was managing. And a couple years in, I've been doing all these works in different areas, and so this isn't a process. This is just kind of a definition of at GLWA what encompasses my day-to-day activities. So where I'm focused, are these high-level things. Metering is a major initiative here to really understand what we're using. And so there's the software side of that where we're upgrading software and we're doing some tracking, and then we have the actual physical metering projects and then we get into the situation where I'm a central resource to the organization, but everything runs kind of in their silos a little bit. So, water plant metering is different than pumping facility metering, which is different than our combined sewer overflow is doing some metering. So I kind of put those in separate tasks, or because they're separate groups involved with those activities. And then our energy efficiency initiatives, that's little things like our lighting, but also looking at our booster stations and how energy is being consumed at them, our water treatment plants and our CSO facilities. Cost evaluation, that's where we're looking at our tariff, and then we are not yet joined, but we're going to join a group that will represent us in the rate cases with the state. So that's kind of, I put into this category. And then the other key piece, and most of my efforts is around the analysis and reporting. So that involves building a database right now that uses this meter data over here. It uses our internal meters. It also uses our billing data from our utility. They have on the website, they have half-hour use data, and then I'm building reporting around that. So the example of that review, that energy use review business process model, I was thinking about in this area because, and that's one of the ones I was kind of saying is I feel like I have somewhat of a process, but I don't have it documented, and I probably don't have it fully defined because I'm not always getting to the finish line on every billing cycle, let's say. So I need to establish how we're going to do that, and we have taken some steps there, and I think something I could look at as building out the documenting the process is meeting with, we have 5 water treatment plants, and so we met with the director of our water plants last week with my DTE energy efficiency guy. So DTE has some tools that come with his job that look at setting goals for energy efficiency, and we're looking at where those goals will fit, like where does it make sense. He has a system to normalize the data year over year, so you can look, so you're looking to apples with weather and demand considerations. So we're going to start a bi-monthly review with each water plant where we look at their energy usage and identify an energy champion. So all those are little pieces that we talk to them about doing, but I don't have that overarching process model developed. And so that is where another area I'll be looking. And then service provider management, just working with our utility. So this, I just wanted to share with you guys and say, you know, these are the areas, and basically I would say these 5 focus areas are pretty close to 100% of my efforts. But within your utilities, which pieces of these may align with what you guys are doing, or which pieces may, or that you're doing, what big area you may be doing. And I know there's been some policy discussions. I'm not doing a lot of policy work. So that's probably something I should be doing more of. So maybe we could look at this as some sort of template and build on it for this group to see all the energy management activities that are going on with us. And John has his hand up. I'll see what John has to say.
You're on mute.
Awesome.
There you go.
Awesome. No, I would, one, and this is where George's comments, we had an initial call, I believe, 5 or 6 months ago. And he commented about how he tried doing it at this level and it just got no traction. So that's why he's focusing at the policy level, trying to drive it and all. And it, which is really why I want to hear, you know, George. And it's also, you know, we're working, our team is working with Metro Vancouver. They're clearly a very progressive leader in the whole field of water, water treatment, and trying to do new things and such. Portland is as well. And then James, I think are you from San Francisco? San Francisco PUC?
WSSC.
Oh, I'm sorry. Other side of the country. My fault. Okay. So like Keith Tyson and all those folks out there. Yep, gotcha. But what we see and what I've seen is that there's hard even getting initial traction. And so that's one of my concerns is like trying to create a business process when it's like, well, the response is like, you know, who cares? Why are we wasting this effort, sort of thing, which is very frustrating because, of course, energy is a very large amount of the budget. So there's the cost driver, there's the greenhouse gas emissions and future sustainability drivers. So those are 2 very different drivers. Well, the third driver actually is interesting, which is the energy reliability aspects. We need to have energy to pump and continue water. So I was just going to say Eric did a tremendous job pulling together all our data from different sources. And that was probably a 2 or 3 year effort. It was ongoing just as I started the program 3 years ago, actually. Looking at billing data, pulling it in, you know, you're all aware of this. You get a stack of a bill, you know, here, you know, it's a chunk of paper. We would get bills that are literally 400 pages thick. Who's going to look through this? So now we have an external service to try pull those out and to pull out all the line items, you know, what's your peak, what's your base, what's your consumption, what's your demand, et cetera, all that sort of stuff. But there's all kinds of other energy data, such as Eric was talking about with the meters, sub-metering, et cetera, et cetera. Once he got that tremendous database then, and so what's the next step to get yourself totally recognized and overwhelmed with work? Because this is Eric's doing all this, is that Eric enabled us to have what is being classified a 1,000-year storm event. We had 7 inches of water. I believe that was in, what, Eric, was it like in 2 hours?
No, 24 hours.
24 hours? I thought it was 13
7 to 8
inches. 7 to 8 inches. Okay.
In 24, yep.
And so we had semis floating down the highway, and because our highways, some of our highways are they're in trenches, and fortunately, then Eric also enabled us to have a power outage where our local energy provider failed to provide us energy, and as it turns out, then one of our geometry of our power supply did not work to provide continuous pumping, and with semis floating around and people being washed out of their homes, there's been a little bit of the news. I think there was a tweet I read about it. Again, I'm being very sorry, under exaggeratory here. So what happened then is Eric had the tool, this energy database, that folks go, holy cow, what happened? And they're going to him, and he has the data to provide back. And so there's this like initial fire. The way I think of it in all of these meetings or a progression of process is that you're building a fire. And sometimes the wood you have is dry tinder, and you throw in a match and floop, and it's like, this is great. And other times it's like big, heavy, wet sticks, and you're throwing in matches, and it's just making some steam. And then if you don't continue doing it, it just goes away completely. And so some of the logs that you need to have in there to build that fire to sustain it is being useful information. And I know, George, you were mentioning this, how you weren't able to get any traction. Well, we had some similar cases where we're looking at, the energy efficiency before and after. What's the delta? That delta of energy efficiency, our local energy provider will pay us to achieve that. And we'll say, so Eric's going, what's the delta? And it turns out that the procurement that we were having, which was some work with a pump station, they didn't even have that in there to put the delta before and after. So another one of Eric's tasks, Eric, you're not fully utilizing the 24 hours that you have each day, I'm saying, by the way, is putting in the metering to quickly to calculate now what the system is using, so that when it becomes more efficient, that change in efficiency or water and energy usage intensity per gallon pumped, we can get money back from DTE. The light bulbs and things he's actually done an awesome job with is it's about 100,000 this year, I think, or a little less than that. So it's not just beans, it's pretty cool. But the energy efficiency for pumping, when we have a $55 million a year budget for energy, now that's some major rocket science there. We're going to likely recover enough to pay for Eric's awesome salary. I mean, it's big. So the idea is getting the policies or getting a need in there. And one of the policies might, the business process is even getting the engineers and like, oh, this is what we do as a matter of course, as opposed to, Eric has to be he's awesome, politely badgering them to get the data out there so we can even go after some of these other energy efficiency type things. I will now quiet, but I just wanted to point out that that energy database is a pretty critical step, and Eric's now very busy because of it. There you go.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can I expound on that awesome dissertation? And I run the risk of taking us potentially off track here, but I have a question for the group in that from what I perceive WISE to be, that I think that all of the working groups are kind of working towards the same goal, which is a continuous improvement philosophy, right? So my question to the other participants here is, how is your organization coordinating the work of all of the groups so that you can take the WISE concept to your upper management, and rather than saying, oh, here's what energy management is doing with WISE, to be able to say, here's what Metro Vancouver is doing with WISE, and here are the different components, and they're all integrated, and they're all working towards, in our case, what we need is a shift in philosophy. We need a shift in how we come to work every day with a, with a recognition and a desire to always get better, right? And that we don't have that now. And that's part of my challenge is, all the great stuff that Eric's doing, we're doing a lot of good stuff too, but it's kind of like, oh, that's cool. And then they move on. And that fire just fizzles out because what we're doing hasn't been placed in a bigger context of a work philosophy and a way of operating utilities and spending taxpayers' money. So I'm curious how others on the call have integrated, like, do each of your organizations have a coordinated WISE team? Personally, I haven't talked to anybody else in our organization who's participating in any of these other initiatives. So my question to my boss after this meeting is going to be, who is the go-to WISE person for Metro Vancouver? Because we need a unified strategy to be demonstrating to our management that this is a good idea. We're investing, like, I'm coming to this meeting, they're paying me to come to this meeting. Like, is this just another meeting that I'm supposed to go to? I hope not. I hope we're actually taking this seriously and that we're going to demonstrate that we're going to get better on many levels. Energy management, asset management, change management, it's all super important. So anyway, sorry, I'm ranting now.
Others have some comments, but George, Tamisa is coordinating things overall now for Metro Vancouver, and there are half a dozen people that are engaged in some of the other teams. So,
okay.
And in fact, even co-leading, for example, asset management and risks. So,
yeah,
yeah,
which is great, but I'll touch base with Tamisa to understand how we're coordinating, but we're pretty good at staying in our silos quite often. So anyway, okay, thanks a lot.
Josh has his hand up.
Yeah, I was going to say, I believe it's our deputy director who was involved in the previous work, and she, I think there were others and that were involved, and so I think Dawn, she sort of re-asked the question when this work transitioned to WEF of okay, who should be involved and where, what are I think energy might have been a new addition to that work, and so was the people part. So I was part of that. Okay, let's get Josh and let's get Alice Raleigh Chesworth, who's like kind of on the sociological kind of what do workforces, how do they operate side of things, and that's how it happened. But I think to the previous commenter's point, it's still not very apparent to me how all this gets filtered into the work that we do as an organization.
Well, maybe I think when it comes really down to it, the people who really generate the value and success are people like very much like you. They're like the people on this call. We've been doing this for more than 4 years, and people contribute in different ways. And the role of consultants, which is the project team, if you will, although in our minds this is more of a movement rather than a project, because project has an end date, and we see this as something that will continue. So it's really people like you who have been contributing the value. It's people like Zonetta and people like Chris Wu from Vancouver. So they're really taking the lead in these different things. And I don't think that we have turned any single utility to become like a wise utility. It's an aspirational thing for us. And I think we're working with different groups in different areas. So for example, on the people side, there's a person from Great Lakes, Kayser Osman, who did tremendous job on the core team there. So there are people working, already on asset management, on business case evaluation, on CIP. It takes a little while, I think, if we focus initially just like on energy management. You are more than welcome to sit on any other meetings to get, to see what is happening in other areas, but to try to change, the entire utility is a bit of a heavy lift. And I think if we make smaller changes and we start changing behaviors, and that's why we have, we have the change management initiative, we have the workforce and organizational culture. We're putting these pieces together. And I'm not aware of any other effort in our industry, frankly, that is doing it this way. We're also bringing in the technology piece that a lot of people are interested in. So I think that as we get engaged, our work and products, because we work together, we're here just to support the utilities, it'll really become sort of self-evident, how. And then if we're successful with, like energy management here and asset management here, it'll sort of be trickling through. But the foundation is really business processes, because that's what people do. And they already know it because they're already doing it. And we're starting very modestly, but just let's document what we're already doing and then growing it from there, So I don't know if this is helpful at all, but I think both, Scott and I and Zonetta is can I call you a veteran of this effort, Zonetta? Is that okay? Since you've been here since day one.
Yeah, that's okay, as long as you don't call me old. That's I'm sensitive to that.
I'm not there. I'm just
okay.
Okay. So
yeah, I'm just being silly. But yes, no problem.
So this will, and another important component of this is you're starting to see the conversation, the peer-to-peer conversation in this call already. This is only our second call. This is a huge benefit, and that eventually gets stronger and sturdy as Josh and George and James and Eric start kind of doing things, on a peer-to-peer basis, learning from each other, sharing artifacts. These kind of things kind of organically grow in something solid and is sustainable. But there is one vulnerability in our movement, and that is that some of the folks who have been really great contributors keep getting promoted. And this is like a horrible impact, because they no longer have time to deal with our